Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, carrying out your charitable wishes forever, whether it's helping shelter animals, feeding the homeless, enhancing the arts, or supporting students. Learn more at leaveabequest.org.
Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Hamley. Ladies, this show is especially for you. And men, you need to pay close attention too. Think back to when you were a little girl. What were you taught about money? Were paying bills, saving money, and investing a regular topic around the dinner table? What about today? Do you still carry the same thoughts about wealth, finance, and your position in life? Up next on Another View, financial empowerment from real women with a unique outlook on what it truly means to be wealthy. Stay tuned. Another View will be right back after this national, regional, and local news from NPR and WHRO News.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Hamley. We're going to be talking about empowering women and wealth on today's show. But before I introduce you to our guests, I want to empower some undergraduate students. There's a scholarship out there, and they are desperately looking to hear from you. So if you live in the York County School District, Williamsburg, James City County, or the greater Williamsburg area, there is a scholarship from the Let Freedom Ring Foundation, and it offers a $3,000 scholarship and a $1,500 scholarship. And you only have until April 28th to go online, fill out the application, and present your essay. And these scholarships hope to advance applicants' knowledge of African American history through essay writing utilizing self-selected prompts. So it's very easy to apply. You have to put some thought behind the essay that you're going to write, but the money is available, and we would love to hear from you. So if you are a student going into college or currently in college in the York County, Williamsburg, James City County, and the greater Williamsburg area, please go to First Baptist Church 1776.org/scholarship. First Baptist Church 1776.org/scholarship and apply, because I'd hate to have money go away and it's sitting there waiting for you. All right. It's a topic that makes a lot of us squeamish, and many believe it is not to be discussed in polite company. I'm talking about money and wealth. But by the numbers, women make up more than half of the U.S. population and control or influence 85% of consumer spending. And the purchasing power of women in the U.S. ranges from $5 to $15 trillion annually. That's trillion with a T. Our guest today says, quote, "Now is the time for us as women in status to, particularly women of color, to shift our mindset and take control of our financial status, allowing us to change the wealth status of future generations." Please welcome to Another View entrepreneur, philanthropist, and author, Dr. Angela Reddix. Her book is called She's Got the Power, Women Building Wealth Through Financial Literacy and Sisterhood. Angela, how you doing?
I am well. So wonderful to be here with you, Barbara.
Thank you so much. And I am so excited to talk to you about what you're doing to help women with empowerment. And I want to start by saying, and in reading the book, to a person, and there are 25 women who tell their stories in this book and their relationship with money, how they feel about what truly wealth is, and so forth. But each story, you ask the question, who are you? And to a person, they were self-confident, they were self-assured, they were positive, even if it didn't start that way. But the ultimate goal was that these women were really about being happy with themselves. And so my question to you is that the beginning of even thinking about creating wealth? Is your attitude about yourself, about your life, about your money, etc.?
So I think there's three pieces. Absolutely your attitude. A lot of it is your knowledge base.
Mm-hmm.
And then third is access. And access to knowledge is one big piece of the access. And what I love about what we've been able to create over this last year and 3 months with the group that we've assembled is the confidence has increased related to this particular topic, because I will tell you, overall, this book represents a subset of the women who I've been able to bring together in what's called the RR Fund.
Mm-hmm.
And in the RR Fund, one of the things that we do in our role and goal is to evangelize about our stories with money. So this first book, which is our hearts on paper, 25 women said, okay, I'll be in the first one. But we're going to be doing this every year. And so there'll be more stories, because I do believe that between all of the stories, people can connect, if not with one person, 2 people, 3 people, or different components of their story, to see that they too can gain some control over what feels for many uncontrollable.
Yeah.
And so confidence, absolutely. And this was written after everyone had been participating in the program for 7 months.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the ins and outs of the program in just a minute. But I'm curious, Angela. So you are everywhere. You are a highly successful entrepreneur. You're a philanthropist. You just made a major gift to your alma mater. You're an author. Why is this so important to you, that you help empower other women, especially when it comes to their finances?
You know what? It goes back, Barbara, to what you said. No matter where they came, there's this piece of confidence that's at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe people gain confidence when they see that if you can do it, could they possibly do it? And so everything that you mentioned, all the things that you just mentioned, is the very reason why it's important for me to do things like this. Because as soon as I am exposed to something, I feel the need, the urgency, almost as if ministry, to go run tell that. Somebody else has to be able to do it. It's not these opportunities, these places and spaces that I'm entering. I am well aware that I am not entering it just for myself. Mm-hmm. I know that most times I'm the first and I'm the only.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be the case.
So who did that for you? Who were the people who helped you to learn, to gain knowledge, and so forth, the same type of way that you're giving back to others?
I have to tell you that it was probably a very different time. I came from an environment where I learned, let's just say from my grandmother, the importance of the heart and to have a heart for service. So I think that fundamentally is, the lesson number one of who I am. I learned from my mother what it looks like to rise in corporate America in a time when African-American women were not rising in corporate America. Mm-hmm. I learned from my mother the very thing that we're talking about. Her relationship with money was amazing. You have to, if you read my story, and those who, it's quite well documented in different places. But, I came from a situation where people would say, there's no way you're going to be successful.
Yeah.
That, my mother was a teenage mother. My mother, she was away at college. And so my grandmother, aunts, and uncles raised me. My father was not present in those early years, et cetera. And yet and still, because of the sacrifices my mother made and was able to get herself to a place where she could command a certain income and could command to be in certain spaces, that I learned through her experiences. And so I'll never forget, I'll share a story, Barbara. My mother was an excellent leader at AT&T, and she would take advantage of opportunities that then allowed her to be called on for very special projects. So there was a special project that she was over at a time when it was called self-paced self-directed teams. She was on the lead of one of these. At the time, it was a new way of looking at the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And that team did so well that she was able to be offered tickets to the Olympics in France.
Wow.
And so I was able to go to France and experience that because of her experience. So when you say who did these things, is it exactly the way I'm doing it? No, but certainly I was able to be in spaces because of the foundation of my grandmother and sharing from the heart, from the exposure of corporate America and finances from my mother. And then wherever I was in corporate America, I was a student.
Yeah.
So wherever my manager was, that's where I was. And it meant longer hours. It meant sacrificing that I didn't get to do some of the fun stuff other people were doing. But I will tell you, any place I left that place better, and every one of them wanted me to stay. And I learned while I was there.
Mm-hmm. So why is the wealth gap knowledge so big, particularly for women? Why don't we talk about money? And especially in our community.
This is deep. Okay, so let's talk first about our community.
Yes, I say especially in our community.
Number one, we don't talk about a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because culturally, we've been taught you keep things in the household. You don't talk outside. So that's number one. That's a cultural. I think most would agree who come from an African American environment. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, you definitely don't share how much money you're making.
Mm-hmm.
So this posture of not sharing, you learn by sharing. So the thought of not sharing, there's also some shame of what we don't have or what we don't know that we don't know. But that oftentimes how we've been able to demonstrate our power, our status, is by the things that we have. And oftentimes that doesn't match. The external doesn't match what you actually have that's working for you internally. And what I mean is in a bank or in a fund or working for you as opposed to you working and spending it all being a consumer. So that has been a cycle that we've been trained. Why? Because it's feeding a part of us that feels that we're less than. So we then go by to show we're more than. And that there is a psychological connection to how we treat money.
440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call to join our conversation. I'd love to hear from you women out there about your relationship with money. What were you taught as a child? Has it changed, and how has it changed as you went into adulthood? And how do you feel about money now? How do you feel about wealth? 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. So, Angela, how do you define wealth? Because I thought that was really interesting in reading all of the various stories and the various ways that people define wealth. And it's not the Oxford Dictionary way.
I have learned. And I sit at a place where I always say, Barbara, I have lived Maslow's hierarchy of need. I've lived it. And I've lived most people in their lifetime, they don't get to that tip. That tip is self-actualization, where you can sit at a place where you're no longer thinking of an agenda that benefits you and your household. That's just not enough. Where you get to a space where you're not talking about housing, food, safety. You're moving up where you're able to sit back and say, now, what does wealth, success, what does that really look like? So for me, I have redefined wealth, and it has really made it very clear when you say, why do you do what you do? It makes it very clear that by doing this, I'm becoming wealthier. And wealth for me means winning economically, by advancing love through humanity. That's what the letters of wealth mean for me. And there, it's so clear to me that the things that I do in the community, that is how I'm becoming wealthier. And and I will tell you, there's this thing about the more you put out, things come back to you. Let me tell you, every time I've done that, then the way the world views wealth as far as financial gain,
Right.
somehow the dots connect and there's benefit there also, but that is not the intention. And I recognize that I can view it that way because of where I sit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so important that it's pretty lonely sitting at the top of that pyramid. I've got to bring some women along with me because I like doing things. And the more women who can come to that place with me, then they can do things with me. So it's some of it selfish in that I want to see more women liberated, because when you have a level of wealth, and we define in the group, we define what does it look like to have, meaning what's your number. But when you have that, you have choices. And choices mean you don't necessarily attract certain people in your life that don't need to be in your life because you understand you have choices.
Mm-hmm.
You don't stay in positions that you don't need to be in. Why? Because you have choices. Those are the things that liberate women, but oftentimes we are caged in somewhat because we don't understand how to get over the hump.
Yeah. So we talk. All the women in the stories talk about knowing their number. What does that mean? What to the layperson? What does that mean to know your number?
So knowing your number is one of the things that we did one of the first 2 months that we joined, and it really comes from my personal experience. Is the way I define the knowing your number.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was prior to forming Reddix. I had very successful careers in corporate America. My last role, I was in leadership at Lockheed Martin before I relocated back down to the Hampton Roads area and formed Reddix. Mm-hmm. And so I immediately had a contract. I immediately had so much demand that I had to make sure that someone was watching the back office, that the invoices were going out, they were coming back in and all of that. And so I pulled my husband out of his career because I needed someone I could trust, and he was in our back office. So what that meant at that point, we had 3 children. Mm-hmm. My husband and my income was coming from this company. Mm-hmm. And so I had to say, okay, in order for me to sleep at night, I need to know what is the number that I need to reach that I could live the lifestyle that we had established for our children. I could make sure that they could go to college. I could make sure that into retirement we would be okay based on that lifestyle. And so we met with my planner and gave him the parameters that were important to us. And he spit out a number. And I used that number to guide everything. When I tell you, as the company was growing and we got to our first $1 million within the first year of the company. Now, that's the company's million. That's not
right.
Angela's million. But we got to our first $1 million in the company. And the bottom line is that number, I had it on my dashboard. I had it on my bathroom mirror. I had it everywhere because I did not spend excessively at all because I wanted to accumulate enough to reach that number because then I could breathe. So it was a 5-year plan to reach the number. And so to answer the question is the number of what do I need to accumulate in order for if life happens, I can know we're okay, that these children would be okay. So that was my target, and it was the guide for everything that I did. The goal was 5 years. We met that number in 3 years because that's all I focused on.
Wow.
So by year about 5 of the company, because we did that probably in year 2-ish, by year 5 of the company, I could make different decisions, not based on I just got to get to the number. I could make different decisions based on really where did I want to take the company. So again, that's what I mean about options. Now, I still, pushed hard, and that gave us the excess. And then I adjusted how I was personally spending. But I tell you, I was living as if I had a managerial level position in a, decent company long after I was actually on paper could have been living very differently. So I would say I didn't even get my first, let's just say something that some of my women would understand. I did not get my first designer bag until year 10 of the company. Okay. When I tell you I reached the goal in year 5.
Mm-hmm. So the discipline is also a part of this whole conversation.
Discipline. And it is based on our ability to delay gratification today so that we can have peace tomorrow.
So, Angela, you know what? There are some people out there that I know are saying, some of our folk that are saying, yeah, but that's her. She had a way to get over, or she has a company, or she's, she's had all these opportunities, and we haven't, or I haven't. What is a beginning point? Because one point that I noticed in your book, you talk about not looking back, but starting from where you are.
Absolutely. So step 1, and we do this as a group, there is a checklist that I would say, and I would call this your starter kit. Your starter kit for how do you use what you have to begin to accumulate a certain level of wealth, or at least get closer to that number. I will tell you the name of the book that we had everyone read in one of our first sessions is The Millionaire Next Door. Okay. Stanley is the last name. I recommend everyone reads that book because it talks about a calculation to determine if you are an under accumulator, if you're average, or if you're above. And so the equation is your salary times your age divided by 10.
Okay.
And this book was written, oh my goodness, this is a relatively easily the 70s, 80s kind of time frame. And so it's been discussed, and you can go on, there's a website associated with it, but it is fascinating because those principles still hold true. So you can determine, where do you stand? Are you slow to accumulate? And then if you look at the factors of why. So let's talk about the why for those who may feel like we have women in the club who are, or in the fund, who are in their 20s, and we have some who are in their 75.
Wow.
And wherever they are, one of them said, I'm doing this not necessarily for me, because when I think about me and where I am, it can be depressing that I didn't know some of these things before. But what I know is, if I can get the information, then I can help my children and my children's children set themselves up. Point is, it's never too late to get better. Now, you may have to run hard to get all the way to the end, but it's never too late to at least change one behavior that would make you better. So you said, how do you get started no matter who you are? And by the way, we have some educators in the group. We have definitely some entrepreneurs. We have individuals who have government jobs. So there's a wide spectrum that all say, wherever we are, we're going to start getting better starting today, January of 2022, so that their story can be different by January 2023.
Yeah.
So here's one of the things. There's 3 areas that we focus on. One is understanding how, no matter how little you start with, using the stock market to your advantage. The second area is, how are we evaluating our real estate, what we currently have, how are we leveraging that, can we get involved in other unique real estate opportunities, and then the third is, how do we pour into women of color businesses and therefore able to get a return that then we're able to benefit from. So those are the 3 areas that we really do a lot of focus on. But before even all of that, there are some things that you have to do to get your house in order before you're able to get there. So step number 1. First, you
go ahead.
Okay. First, you have to definitely ensure you have income coming in. I mean, you can't save what you don't have, right?
Right,
So you have
right.
to have income coming in. And the most valuable asset to income is understanding the value of time. So for those who are saying, I want more income to come in so that I can use these additional funds in order to do some things to put into those pots that I just mentioned, well, figuring out how you're able to monetize your excess time. So perhaps you're not just waiting to get a promotion at your current job or hopping from job to job, but how are you leveraging your time? Are you wasting it going to parties and clubs, or are you being serious about my time is my most valuable asset?
Absolutely. And that side hustle. Let me do this real quick. 757-440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240 are the numbers to call. We're talking about your relationship with money and building wealth. And if you're just joining us, we're talking with entrepreneur, philanthropist, and author Dr. Angela Reddix. Her book is called She's Got the Power: Women Building Wealth Through Financial Literacy and Sisterhood. We got a question from Facebook, Angela. Kevin wants to know, once you take your salary, multiply your age, and divide it by 10, what do you do with that figure?
That figure is to let you know where you stand or where you need to stand in order to be able to say you're good as far as your level of income or level of wealth.
So that's your ultimate number that you try to get to.
That is your ultimate number according to the millionaire next door.
Right.
Now, that is one formula for the number. As I mentioned in the beginning, the number as I define it was for the goals that I had. Very specific. I was very clear with my goals because I knew the risk that I was against, because I was responsible. This company was responsible for our entire family. So for me, I added a different factors to that, and everyone needs to have a financial planner or a certified person who can guide them with that by giving them your specific needs so that they can give you your very specific number.
You know, speaking of that also, what questions should you ask someone as you're seeking your financial planner? Because, you know, a lot of people can say they're a financial planner, but you know, I know there's a certification for one, but what questions should you ask so that you can be comfortable that that person really has your best interests at heart?
Great question. And I would say, you know, a financial planner, and, you know, some are known as wealth managers, depending on the levels that you are, but those individuals become a very let's just say they're all up in your business.
Right.
So with that, they only can help you as much as you're going to be honest. I would say that I have shifted through the years. So my planner had to shift through the years, meaning there have been several times that I've outgrown my planner. So I would say in doing that, you must understand that you need to interview your planner, not just for their knowledge, but that they have the capacity to take you where you're attempting to go. So if I were to say off the top of my head the things that were important to me, I've probably shifted in my needs, my level. I would say since my 20s, which is when I first engaged a planner, I have shifted 5 times. And none of those times have been because the planners weren't good. It wasn't that. It was I had a different need based on the level I was in my life at that time. So what was important? What are the questions? Well, certainly you need to make sure they're certified. So you have to do your homework, make sure they have the proper certification. But number 2, what are their affiliations? Because the way I've used my planners and those who've worked well with me, they become partners to help me do some of the other things that's important for wealth building. So what relationships do they have for me that was important that may not be important for, you know, your situation? The third thing, and really I'm saying third, but it's so important, and it's chemistry.
Yeah.
I am a woman of faith. So things that are important to me to give it's based on my philosophy of life. That's very different, and I know I'm very different than a lot of, let's just say, if we're thinking about the bottom line, you probably wouldn't always do some of the things I do. And I'm not driven by that because I believe, as I mentioned, my definition of wealth is different. I get there, and I get there in a nice way, I will tell you. However, it may not be what someone would advise immediately. So there has to be chemistry to understand and respect your preferences.
Yeah.
However, it has to be someone you can respect and know that they have the credentials to get you there. But there has to be an understanding of the importance and what drives you and your strategy for your finances. So those are some of the things. For me, your availability. Sorry, I do a lot of things. I need people who can work with me, who can flex. I can't just call you between the hours of 9 to 5. That doesn't work for me.
Right.
For someone else's situation, that could work.
So what? I just lost because I got so caught up in what you were just saying. So let me ask you this: I'm assuming that you and your husband had many conversations about this, you know, in terms of him coming into the company and so forth. But my question is, if you have a spouse who may not be on the same page as you are in terms of building wealth, and this is for women in general, how do you start that conversation? One, and what do you need to do so that's not a hindrance? Because, you know, the haters are out there. And there are people who even internally in your own circle may not necessarily want to see you succeed in the way that you are trying to succeed, you know?
And those people, just so I'm answering correctly, are we saying in the context of your spouse might be one of those people?
Could be. Could be. It could be. It could be a spouse, or it could be your best friend. I mean, you know,
absolutely.
When it comes to people trying to grow and to gain monetary growth as well as their own spiritual and physical and emotional growth, there are people who are close to you sometimes who become afraid, I guess, because they don't know who this new you is going to be.
And so, that's a loaded, big. I'm trying to chunk the answer. I want to start with the piece that you said at the end, and then we'll see where this goes. But I will say, if we go back to the foundation that everybody there is a mental health component to money. If we recognize that, then the first thing that we have to do when we're talking about money is do some work on our identity. That is being introspective is number one. So if you have not taken care of things with yourself, I am telling you, put a different value on money, because money can represent many things. It represents, some people fear it, and that's why you have many people who are spiraling out of control, then going to a place where it even leads to homelessness because of the fear of money, not even want to open the envelope when a bill comes because of the fear. Yeah. It can go from, money is what you use to cover up the things that you aren't happy with about yourself. It almost becomes like lipstick, making it pretty, but you can't put lipstick on a pig and think it's going to look good. You've got to take care of you. You got to figure out yourself first. So that's number one. I say that to say, when you know yourself and when you know your value, how you communicate and bring other people along is very different, because you walk with confidence with it. It is not, I need you to validate, but I'm trying to help you come along. So you change your position in the conversation. So if we accept the fact that there is a step one is to be clear with who you are and your personal value, then as far as the friends being ready, we also have to be patient that everyone hasn't done the work on themselves. They're not hating on you. Yeah. They are scared. Yeah. They haven't done the work on themselves. So I think a little bit of grace in that. That doesn't mean I'm not going to continue to walk where I need to walk. I can have grace. I'm going to share some knowledge with you, but recognize that your response can only be, you can only give me what you have. So if you haven't done the work on yourself, you can't respond to me in that way. And therefore, you need to make sure you create a circle that you can grow with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's number. Now, the situation with the husband. When I talk to young couples before they get married, let me just say this. The time to have this conversation is before you get married. And, you know, it doesn't seem glamorous. It doesn't seem like stuff. No. You need to have this conversation before you get married so that you can understand what your strengths are, what his strengths are, what his weaknesses, so that you understand how you can come together and figure out how I can, you know, where you're weak, maybe I'm strong. Mm-hmm. But if it's too much of that, we need to think about some other things. But so that goes down a whole nother track.
Yes.
So the conversation, any listeners, before you get married, make sure you've talked about your financial philosophy. Mm-hmm. Have that conversation. Okay.
Yeah, because it's really important. If you don't, then that's going to be a problem.
Then it's a whole other situation.
Yeah.
So the people who are engaged or thinking about, just know, great job, and go ahead and have the conversation tonight. At least get on the same page with what that looks like. And I say that from personal experience. I met my husband. I was 18 years old. And so I am so glad that I could see his habits. You know, we got married years and years and years later, but I could see his habits. He could see my habits. I saw what he aspired to. Let me just tell you, he is a very simple, we don't need a lot kind of person. Mm-hmm. I work hard, and guess what? I want to live. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we gotta. So, but I like peace of mind of knowing I can live and everything is okay back in the bank. I know that that's okay. So we're able to plan together prior to us getting married. I'm telling you, when we were engaged, and even after we got married, we would have, seriously, Barbara, Sunday meetings. It was every Sunday, and I had an agenda. And it was, we talked about things that matter. Now, that continued and is all fine and good till you get the first child, and life is just different. But I'm just saying that we had that discipline up front, and it has helped. And I'm not going to tell you there hasn't been time since, because you grow and you shift. And if you don't go back to those basic things, then you can get out of whack easily. So for those who are not married, that's my recommendation.
That's your advice there.
But for those who are married, the bottom line is this. You've got to understand, again, where you're trying to go. You have the communications, but you do have to have a little grace that that's not what you said when we got into this, you know, this arrangement. Now, you kind of got brand new, so you got to allow some time with that. However, there are moves that you can make, and as long as you become clearer, again, your communication style and bringing him along could be helpful, because no one wants to be in an environment where they're suffering. So if you can show how this is going to be for the best of the unit, that's a good place to start the communication.
Still communication. That is the key. Let's talk to Patricia in Suffolk. Hi, Patricia. You're on the air.
Hi, yes. This is the first time caller, so I'm like a little nervous. But anyway,
don't be nervous.
Okay. I'm going to jump in. One of the conversations were, how do people get started? Mm-hmm. My thing is, I retired military, and I came from a very humble beginning. And I've learned that sometimes if you want to save money, you have to, it's just my perspective, sometimes you got to do a job that pays that you may not be all passionate about, but it's a constant income in for you. And then because it is, and it pays the health and all the other stuff, you save money when you can. So eventually later in life, it could be 10 years from that point, it could be 15, but you will be able to go into a passion thing. So I think people have to understand that in order to save, sometimes you just got to do the old-fashioned thing, is just work hard and do a job and get the experience, sometimes the certification, sometimes the training. And in my case, I was in the military 20 years, So when I retired,
Barbara, are you there?
it opened up a lot of opportunities for me. But because I was
I can't hear
disciplined,
her.
not saying
You
I
can't
liked
hear
it
her?
every
Okay, let me translate. Patricia, unfortunately, our guest can't hear your question, so let me translate what you said to her.
Okay, it's just a statement. Okay, gotcha.
Okay,
it's not a question. It's more or less a
more
statement.
I got you, and I want her to respond to that. So let me repeat it so that she can hear. Angela, you can still hear me, okay? Correct?
I can.
Okay. So Patricia is retired military, and she was saying that sometimes in order to get started, you may have to take a job that may not be your passion job, but it pays the bills so that you can save and work towards at a later time getting into your passion position.
That's right.
Okay. So you want to respond to that?
Absolutely. You know, I talk a lot in presentations about being the CEO of you. And step one of that is to understand your mission and really be able to have a personal mission statement. When you have a personal mission statement, it keeps you focused on what your overall big picture is. And then that it allows you to be okay with, I'm going to take this step because I'm very intentional about how that step is leading me towards something bigger. So it may not be that the first step is the ultimate, but the steps need to align what I call a critical path. It has to be on the critical path of success. But unfortunately, most of us haven't defined what the end needs to look like. So if you haven't defined that, how do you know that this is, generally speaking, you may have, okay, I want to be a broadcast journalist. So big picture there. But it does go beyond that. Like ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish? Because our career is just one step of that. It is toward the bigger picture. And what is the bigger picture?
So, Angela, if someone wanted to join the RR Fund, it started out as invitation because you were starting a new fund and a new group. Is there opportunity for others who may be interested to contact you or to get involved in some way?
There are ways for others to get involved. It is a closed group of 100 women, and there's a reason for that, for different regulations, SEC, et cetera. But there are 3 goals that we have as a group, and we are a formal LLC and all of that. There's three goals. One is to educate. The second is to activate. So anyone in the group, we should be better because of that, and therefore can go out and help other people be better. And then the third is to evangelize. And so I would say many of the things that I'm talking about, I discuss on my website, angelareddix.com. And so you can go there. And from there are branches to different programs that I have to basically always my mission is to empower women and children, women and girls from cradle to grave.
And speaking of that, because before we run out of time, I do want to talk about Envision, Lead, Grow, because not only are you dealing with adult women, but you're really trying very hard to make sure that our young women, that our teens and young adults are focused on what they need to do to be successful. So tell us about ELG.
Absolutely, the joy and love of my life. ELG, cannot believe we're going into our 7th year.
Fantastic.
We for those who may not know, Envision, Lead, Grow is an organization, a nonprofit, where we empower girls starting in middle school to transform communities of poverty to communities of prosperity through the promise of middle school girls. So the carrot that we dangle is entrepreneurship, but what they get is so much more. And it's the foundation of what would make them excellent as an entrepreneur, but also an excellent employee and an excellent leader. So they start with us in 5th grade. They continue with us through high school. Now we're working with college age. And so in working with the girls, and to the tune of 2,189 now throughout 48 states. And we work specifically with girls in Title I school environments. But I will tell you, ELG has been the gift that just continues to give, for as much as people and the girls say, Dr. Ange, you give us so much. They give me so much, because I'm telling you, it has helped me to reconcile some things with little Angie. and so that's been important. But also in working with the girls, we work with them. They become thousandaires while they're
I love that.
12 and 13 years old. They're thousands. Someone has bought enough of their items that they've created that they are thousandaires. And in becoming this thousandaire and having these big thoughts, and they go home sometimes, and because the mothers have not been empowered, they're asked to put these big thoughts into a ring-size box. And so I remember it so clearly. It was on my way back from receiving the Ebony Power 100 award, and I was on the flight, and I kept saying to myself, if I really want to impact these girls, I have to work with women, because women have to see bigger, so that the girls, when they're coming back and seeing bigger, there's that connection. And so that's how this all came to be, the RR Fund and the Reddix Rules program that I have, where I mentor 10 business women per year to ensure that they can have operational excellence and remain in business and thrive. So all of these things that have kind of come out, they've all come from my experience with working with the girls. So I would say the RR Fund, the Reddix Rules, all that's happening with women is because of my desire to ensure that our next generation of women, that they have all the support systems around them, that they can be all that they are meant to be.
The book is called She's Got the Power, Women Building Wealth Through Financial Literacy and Sisterhood. Dr. Angela Reddix and the RR Fund Sisters. Check it out. It really will inspire you, I promise. Angela, thank you so much for joining us on Another View today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. Always a good time, Barbara.
Absolutely. You take care, and we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Essie Patha-Murkerson from Law and Order. You are listening to Another View.
And welcome back. This year's Virginia International Tattoo theme is A Salute to Military Families. As part of the celebration, American Gold Star mothers will be honored. These women and their families gave the ultimate sacrifice when their children died while serving their country. At this time, we'd like to introduce you to one of them. Her name is Mona Gunn, and she's the only African American in Gold Star's 107-year history to hold the office of National President. She shares her story with our Lisa Godley.
For Mona Gunn, October 12th of 2000 was a day she will never forget. She was working as a principal at Norfolk's Fairlawn Elementary School when her private line rang.
And it was my sister who said, "What ship is Sharon on?" And I said, "The Cole." She said, "It's in the news." So I hung up the phone and went across the hall to the school library, turned on the television there, and there on CNN, there was a picture of the ship and breaking news, 4 sailors were killed. And I went back to my office, connected with that 4 right away, because I had 4 sons, and I just prayed that he was not one of those 4.
Her son, Sharon, had decided to follow in his father's footsteps and join the Navy right after high school. After basic training, he was assigned to the USS Cole.
I left school, called my supervisor and said, "I'm going home until I hear that my son is okay. He's on that ship." So I went home and watched the TV and news, and finally they said, "You want information, go to the base." I went to Eli Hall, where you had family members, military people there trying to comfort us and assure us that they were trying to get as much information as possible. They said, "If you have on name tag, if you sign in, we will find you." So I got up to get something to drink or something to eat when someone came to me and said, "Miss Gunn, we're looking for you." And that was how I found out. So I did not get to knock at the door.
Sharon had only been in the Navy 9 months when, according to investigators, a small bomb-laden boat pulled alongside the Cole, offered friendly gestures to crew members, and then detonated explosives, ripping a 40-foot wide hole midship. Initial reports said 4 sailors were killed.
He was definitely one of the 4. when the news was 4 were dead. So we were able to get his remains back. That happened on the 12th. I think we got his remains back on the 18th. So he was one of the first services that was held in this area.
The number of sailors who died as a result of the terrorist bombing eventually grew to 17, with 39 others injured. Sharon Gunn was laid to rest in Arlington National Cemetery. She says 4 years passed before she even considered getting involved as a Gold Star mom.
I opened up the newspaper, and there was an article about a national convention for American Gold Star mothers in downtown Norfolk at Sheraton. And when I read the article, I saw a picture, too, of women in white and pictures of their sons. And that's when I said, wow, American Gold Star mothers. Got in the car that weekend and just drove right down to the hotel and just walked in to introduce myself to some other moms.
Mona says she filled out an application and was assigned to the only Virginia chapter, which was 3 hours away in Alexandria. Several years later, she would take the lead and charter a Hampton Roads chapter, not only giving Gold Star mothers here in Hampton Roads a place to share their journey and bond, but a vehicle where they can support both active duty military and veterans.
We volunteer and provide gifts to the VA hospital. We help raise funds to get sponsors for the Christmas wreath, because we often say you die twice, once when you take that last breath, and again when your name is never spoken. So we find ourselves on National Wreaths Across America Day at veteran cemeteries for the Christmas wreath on a headstone, saying the names of those men and women who served our country.
Their list of events to support our military is extensive. And in 2023, the Virginia International Tattoo wants to make sure Mona and the other Gold Star mothers know just how much what they do is appreciated. And Mona says the feeling is mutual.
I really appreciate International Tattoo for giving us the honor, American Gold Star mothers the honor, as well as our military. It means a lot because we've paid the ultimate sacrifice.
For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And we thank you all for your service to our country. This year's tattoo will take place April 20 through 23rd at Norfolk Scope, and with WHRO-FM's very own Raymond Jones as the MC. One other event I want to tell you about before we go this afternoon, there is a youth conference being held at the Kroc Center in Norfolk on Saturday, April the 15th from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. The conference is on gun violence, which you know is very plaguing our communities these days, taking back the neighborhood and mental health. It is free. It is open to the public. There's no registration required. Just show up at the Kroc Center on Saturday, April the 15th from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. and it's for young folks. Bring them along. Next week on Another View is the Another View Roundtable, and we have a guest pundit joining us. You'll have to tune in to find out who it is. Our theme music is an original composition created especially for Another View by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Jordan Christie is our audio engineer, and Dr. Barry Graham answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get together again next Thursday at noon for Another View.
Support comes from Hampton Roads Community Foundation, partnering with donors from all walks of life to improve southeastern Virginia through grants, scholarships, and leadership initiatives. Learn more at hamptonroadscf.org.